For me, the solution, in some ways, is I'm looking for more and more young people to be invested in what we call the project of intellectualism. Okay? I'm not saying that the tradition shouldn't exist. I have a strong belief in the tradition. We now need to find a way of marrying the tradition with the challenges we have at the moment. We live in a world where things are being compartmentalized. Everyone's a specialist in something. I do not expect the ulama to know the answers to everything. Okay, then come to some of us who are experts in other fields. I'm a political scientist, I'm a historian, ask me about what's happening in this region. We can sit down and we can work with this together. In that sense, the shura of the ummah is necessary. We have to now start working together, networking together, to try to find solutions to our problems. And as young people, one of the things I'm going to say to you is that it breaks my heart that in university, some of the best students are not Muslims. And when the Muslims are good students, they go into engineering and all the subjects where money needs to be made. And what happens is thinkers are cultivators of society, right? Whether you're an alim or just a general thinker. Thinkers are cultivators of society. They hold governments to account. They hold society to account. They hold themselves to account. They give you an understanding of what your identity is. They give you an understanding of what your faith is. We need more of that. We're losing that. It's draining away. And it freaks me out. Really does. It freaks me out. That in my university, I was the only Muslim, and Husseini will tell you, who studied Ottoman history. The only one. Nobody else. Nobody cared. And it drove me insane. And I had to defend and represent that whole community in England at the time. It was strange that in England, when there was a radio show, I was the only Muslim invited to talk about Islamic history. What's going on here? Some of the best academics when it comes to Sharia studies in Western academia and Islamic studies and Ottoman history are Jewish. They have no problem writing about Islamic history. And yet Muslims do not want to invest in this because there's no money in it. And I understand that. We need money. Of course we do. And we need strong societies. And we need people who are experts who can facilitate that. But it's you guys who are in an Islamic university to some degree. You need to ask yourself the next question. What do I do next? What is my objective? What's the point of this? Why am I studying these subjects? Who am I going to help? And I'll be fair and honest. It's not easy. It's not. Husseini and I can tell you this. We went through so many challenges trying to get to this stage. And I've been through so many challenges just to get to this table, to hold this mic, to tell you this today. And I'm not going to forget that, okay? And I'm going to keep saying it. I say this to my students all the time in Istanbul, all right? That, listen, you are important. In the West, one of the interesting things in the West is they don't celebrate mediocrity. They tell you that you can be whatever you want to be. Kids say they want to be Superman. Tamam, you can be Superman. If I told my mum I wanted to be Superman, she'd say, what the hell is wrong with you? Right? It's not their fault. It comes from a colonial mentality. When colonialism came to our countries, it bashed us into submission, into thinking we were worthless. What happens with that is that that goes so deep into the culture that we start telling our kids that you can't achieve. It's impossible. This is not possible from you. What I'm saying to you is it is possible. It might be difficult. Maybe not all of you will be famous, but we are all parts of a clock. Some pieces are bigger than others. Some pieces are very small, but they need to work together for the clock to function, right? So what I'm telling you, as a ummah, if you start thinking as a ummah, you know your role within this collective, you start to understand that even if your role is small in this collective, okay, I have 1 minute to go, wow. Even though, right, you believe or you're made to believe that you can't make a change, you can. And I'll tell you why. Because fundamentally, you're not here to please anyone but Allah Ta'ala. We of course function in a way where we want practical results. Of course we do. But I'll tell you the story of Yunus alayhi salam. When Yunus was in the stomach of the whale, in the darkness of the stomach, in the darkness of the sea, in the darkness of the night, Allah Ta'ala says to him, Ya Yunus, it's not important what they think of you. It's important what I think of you. Right? And it's really hard to remain motivated in this environment. It's difficult when all you're seeing is chaos, destruction, and so forth. So what I'll say to you in my closing comment is, look, We need to now start talking, okay? Physically, intellectually, socially. We need to start asking ourselves those questions over and over. And even if we don't come out with the solutions today, there should be a start that hopefully we can have a better future. And inshallah, it will be that. If it's not, it's okay. The effort is what we're interested in. The results, Allah knows best. Thank you very much for your time. I'm really sorry if I bored you.
For reminding us to avoid celebrating mediocrity. In fact, the understanding of IIUM in trying its best in developing this understanding of Muslim future thinkers is exactly to leave behind this understanding that Muslims are mediocre people. Because if I was having a discussion, with colleagues and asking them which Muslim has won recently a Nobel Prize, and there is no response because we don't have such people winning such prizes. What's going on? Aren't we qualified enough? Aren't we skilled enough to show to the world that we can do something, we can change, we can converse, we can talk, and we can initiate something that other people will be interested about that. So to continue the discussion, I will invite now Professor Faris, who is member of MKA National Committee and member of National Professors Council. Professor, you have the floor, please.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Brother Mr. Chairman and my fellow panelists, I just discovered that both of my fellow panelists are political scientists. Or historian and political scientist. Okay. So I am a professor in engineering. So we have a different approach, different methodology. So let me give an engineering approach to this topic. So that is my... As long as the goal is the same. Oh yeah, sure. We will reach faster. We will reach faster from engineering approach. First of all, let me say that I'm very happy to see the young faces in this great hall. And I realized that this event or conference is also in line with the vision TN50 of Malaysia, the Transformation National Plan in 2050 of Malaysia. So let me first invite all of you, let's go to the year 2050. Now we are 2017. So now let's go to 2050. Maybe I'm not there anymore. So in the year 2050, maybe some of you 50 years old, 60 years old. Us. They will 80, no. I think most of them are now about 25, right? 25, 30. So plus another 30, 60. So you are still young at that time. Yeah, still young. In 2050, you are still young. Meaning that that is your prime time. Whereas us is, gone. We are gone already. So meaning that the future is yours. That remind me, let me begin by one anecdote. It remind me of a statement that was always mentioned by our former rector, Dato' Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman. He always mentioned to me, at the time I was young also, he always mentioned to me, this was like 15, 20 years ago, he said that he's the rector of this university. So he said, brother, forget about my generation. We are hopeless. We already, caused so many trouble to the Ummah. Forget about this, my generation. But at this university, International Islamic University, we said that we have the opportunity to build a new generation, okay, that should come out and protect the ummah in the future. And then he always narrate the story of Musa alayhi salam, okay, where you know the story of Musa alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked Musa alayhi salam and his people to go into Palestine and then because of hesitation of some of the people, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them 40 years lost. Okay, this is all in the Quran. So the rector always asks us, why 40 years? Why 40 years? This is what I learned from the guru. So he said that, why 40 years? To change one generation. Because that generation is hopeless. We have to wait for another generation to come up and save the ummah. So brothers and sisters, you are the savior of ummah. That is my first point. So that's why from now, you must think about 2050. Where are you going to be in 2050? Maybe some of you will be Prime Minister in Africa. Some Prime Minister in Suriname. He mentioned Suriname. Albania. Indonesia. You know, some of you will be Prime Minister in Malaysia. Okay? In 2050. We never know. All right? So that's why I think, like my other speaker mentioned, that you have to start thinking and start the planning. That is the most important thing. You must start the planning. Meaning to say that, brothers and sisters, from today, from this event today, you must be clear about what is the shape of the ummah that you want to see in the year 2050. What type of ummah? You have to vision. You must have the vision. You have to see what I want this world and what I want this ummah to be in the year 2050. It must be clear. This is the engineering approach. Okay? First, we must be clear about the output, what we want in 2050. Then you must start planning. You must start planning because you have to start planning what to do today, what to do tomorrow, what to do next month, 3 years after this, 5 years after this. And inshallah, in 2050, you will achieve what you plan, what you dream of. So I think that is the most important thing. You must have the vision first. If you do not have the vision, you are in the dark. You are in the dark. That is a problem. Okay, talking about vision, of course, if you read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has trained him to be a visionary leader, clear where to go. Okay, with a very, important mission and the direction that he is going. So we must be very, very clear, because you are the only hope of the ummah. You must say that. I think that all of you who are here, the young one, you are hope for the ummah, to shape the ummah for the year 2050. Okay, the rest 5 minutes. So I go back to our session today is talking about the OIC movement. And our brother chairman is working with OIC for 10 years, at least. So he knows better than me. So maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong. I am just an outsider view. I just attended a few OIC meetings. One is in Syria before the war and so on and so forth. That's all. And alhamdulillah, I think our university, IIUM also is affiliated with OIC. But of course, they only give us the dua only. The IIC always give the dua, Ya Allah, may Allah help the university. Without any money, without any physical support, only dua. So we thank the OIC for the dua for our university. Hopefully they will continue making dua for us. Okay, so okay, I just want to wake them up because they are sleepy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether they can be a future leader or not. 5 minutes lecture already sleeping. Cannot think. Okay, so talking about OIC. Okay, so this is what I think my earlier panel mentioned. This ummatic paradigm. Okay, but of course I agree with my earlier panel that you, the younger generation, first must understand history. That is very important. You must understand history. Okay, not only the history of OIC, you must also understand the history of the creation of mankind. since Adam alayhi salam until today. You must study the history of people, of mankind, to put things in perspective. Okay, otherwise you are going to, otherwise you have a lot of questions. But if you understand the history, okay, then you will understand what is going on in this world. Okay? So when I'm talking about OIC also, the young Muslim generations must understand the history of OIC. What is the purpose? When it was established? What is it for? And then based on that, then you can work, okay, to the year 2050. What type of OIC should be there in the year 2050? Okay? So for me, if I were you, okay, so I would want to see that, of course, in the year 2050, Muslims are united. I think that's what I want to see. Muslims are united. All right? And, of course, you must have now plan for it. How to make Muslims united in the world in the year 2050. Okay, with all the background today, with all the baseline that we have today. Okay, looking at the Ummah right now. Okay, so how are we going to plan so that Muslims are united, so that based on the unity and based on common principles and common goals, okay, then we are going to have one voice. And with one voice, I think we are going to be very strong. The issues that are mentioned just now, because we do not have one voice. So that is one very important thing. Unity is very, very important. But of course, bear in mind, when I talk to the young people, when I say unity, to their mind, unity is everybody is the same. No, that is not unity in Islam. You may understand. Unity does not mean that everybody is the same. Everybody speak the same language. Everybody eat the same thing. No, that is not unity. See, in Islam, even though we talk about unity, we agree to disagree in many things. But we unite in the principles things. So that's why in Islam we have usul and we have the fiqh or the branches. Yeah, okay? So the principles, we must be united. The principles, we must be united. Regardless of whether you are from Asia or from Europe, or whether you are from Africa or from another planet, okay? And the principles, we must be united. But we can disagree on so many things. But the disagreement, okay, should not disunite us. Okay, because when we see around, we have so many things in common. Okay, we have so many things in common. Okay, but because of one or two things that is disagreement, because of that, then we fight among each other. So that's why there are so many things in common. The principle must be there. Okay, because the time is up, let me just finish with engineering point. For me as an engineer, I want to see that the OIC movement, okay, we need to foster a strong relationship in terms of technology. Right now, the Muslim world are still the consumers. So I want to see in the year 2050, the Muslim world should be technological contributors. We need to contribute technology to the world. We are not just a consumers to technology. So because of that, we need to share our expertise. This is another thing. One is we are not united. Another one is we are not sharing our expertise. Okay, some countries have more expertise than the other, has some strengths than the other, but they are not sharing with other. So we have to share the expertise. We have to forge collaborations. And my last point, because of the time, is we need to come up with solutions that are pertinent to our ummatic problem. For example, when we want to promote research, we have to do research in the area that can solve problems affecting our ummah. Okay, so because sometimes when we do research, we are talking about research that is not that relevant, that the need of our ummah. We have to study what are the priority and what are the needs of the Muslim ummah. And based on that, we have to plan and come up with the research. Because nobody else will do it for us. Nobody else will do it for us. I mean, that is because we have to come up with our own plan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will help us in this effort. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My last panelist is Professor Dr. Wahabuddin Rais, a member of Malaysian Association for American Students. As a good Rais, is the last one to speak. Please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me take this opportunity to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to share my views related to a very important topic, and my fellow panelists. When Prof. Walid called me and he told me to talk on something very important, and when I checked my email, he said he has sent me an email. I checked an email, it was written, OIC Movement for Stronger Political Community. I thought it should have been a stronger OIC movement for stronger political community, perhaps. That would be. And when I came in here, then Mr. Chairman used the word political communities. That made me a little bit worried that am I talking about the community or communities? And that where Prof. Faris took you to 2050, 50 years ahead, but I thought I'll take you back to history, because we all live on history, and my colleague here is history from the field of history, and I thought that would help us to really place where OIC is actually in reality can be placed, and understanding something's origin, understanding something's root would help us basically to understand what that thing stands for, what is the substance of that thing. And I think this is to me, very important. While I'm not sure now, Mr. Chairman, should I talk about communities? I think you make sense. But if I talk political community, then I think OIC is bound to fail for that. And that reminded me to look at something. And I was reading something this morning, and all of a sudden, a professor was writing on the OIC, not its first name, but its changed name, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, not conference. And then he said its founding fathers have established OIC for some reason. That's why I need to take you back to history and really to understand. And therefore, for the youngers, I think by the time when it was being created, perhaps I didn't exist as well, Prof, yet. So I can consider myself, when the 72, when the whole thing was signed, and yeah. So I did not exist, so I still consider myself the young generation rather than the old. So I'm still young, and by the time I think you become 50, probably we become over 100. That we'll debate later. But then I was just thinking, what is this OIC? What is the purpose for what it has been created? And if you are going to, in 50 years or 30 years, expect something from OIC, which OIC is not actually meant to, or is not created for, then I think we are looking for something and asking a child who cannot even cross the road to carry a heavy bag. Then I came across this thing. The main objectives, if you allow me, I will read. Sometimes reading is better, rather than the main objectives and commitments laid down in the constitutional charter of the Islamic Conference then, but then it is here Islamic Cooperation, are to improve and strengthen Islamic friendship and solidarity. Strengthen, improve Islamic friendship and solidarity among member states. Correct me if I'm wrong, 57 countries? Okay. One suspended Syria.
Yes.
Yeah. We were suspended as well. Afghanistan was suspended as well from 1979 to 1989 because Russians were there, but still we got back into, despite the fact that communists were ruling. That is the situation and the condition of the OIC. So it is to improve and strengthen Islamic friendship and solidarity among member states. Is a very noble objective. Protect and defend Islam's true image. That one we will have to think, to protect and defend, right? We will see at the end how can we go for this protection and defense. Image and prevent its defamation. So when Islam is being defamed, when Islam's image is under threat, it needs to be defended and protected. To promote dialogue among civilizations and religions. So we promote dialogues among civilizations. What do we do about differences among ourselves? Where we have, in the midst of us, different things are being created and they are used. What OIC would need to do. Strive to achieve integrated and sustainable human development and ensure the well-being of member states. Furthermore, the Charter safeguards the rights to self-determination and non-interference in the internal affairs of member states, as well as their sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. I would like to draw everyone's attention to this point. Self-determination, non-interference in the internal affairs of member states, as well as their sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. So if I'm dividing this quote into probably two issues, one calls for solidarity, cooperation, friendships, settlement of disputes, and other things among Muslims and Muslim states. On the other hand, it accepts the modern nation state as a fundamental principles of our relationship. And I think this is something that which we need to really think about. We talked about Ummah, we talked about unity, we talked about borderless communities and societies, we talked about everything that really does not recognize borders and the reality that we are facing. Yet, the very organization that we are talking today about is claiming that it safeguards the rights to self-determination, non-interference in the internal affairs of member states, and their sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. Now, if you're going for a political unity, stronger political community, does OIC advocate that in the first place? I beg to disagree on this point. Therefore, I would say for every one of us here, I think we need to be very realistic at what we are, who we are, and how can we really proceed from here. And I would just basically focus on maybe 2 or 3 difficulties that Muslim nations, within the context of the modern nation-state system, we must agree on this. Our borders are defined. We must agree OIC is there to recognize these borders. We must agree that we cross these borders with the passports and everything. We must understand that these collaborations, help and assistance, whether it's on the level of technology, on the level of economic, sustainable, everything that comes in, it must come with from other countries and Muslim countries, it must come with a strength attached to. And it is this younger generation who can take up this OIC of 1970s and transform it into OIC of 2050, and probably that OIC of 2050 should be an OIC that which our friend here talked about, an Umatic paradigm. If we are able to really transform this OIC into that, then perhaps we would have succeeded, and I think we would be moving to. But if you would like to do this, keep in mind this, we are having serious challenges. And perhaps I would just point at maybe one or two in the interest of the time. The first problem that in the Muslim world we have is we have a very serious leadership crisis. And I think one of the difficulties that we are facing today is in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, every part is we don't have leaders. We do look at Turkey, and despite all the difficulties and everything that stands against on the way that Turkey is claiming to the whole world and declaring it more than millions of times that I'm a secular state, but they cannot accept Turkey as a secular state. Despite its constitution clearly states it is a secular state, despite its president is saying that we are a secular state, but they cannot believe because it is an cradle of civilization. And they cannot believe that Turkey, who will play this game of secularism, would really abide by the principle of secularism. And this leadership is also challenged by our other good friend, friendly country, which is Saudi Arabia, which is basically dominating OIC. And then on the other side of it, you have the Iranian state. Now, you will have Turkey a very different approach. The Saudi approach will be a very different approach, and the Iranian Shiite approach will be a very different and dividing approach. This is a challenge. I would consider this as a challenge, and I think this is a challenge where the younger generation can look at and can focus which direction Muslim should choose. I would say at the moment we have these three choices. Whether we like it or not, we are moving through them. But it is you, the younger generation, who could make a choice whether to choose Turkey, Saudi Arabia, or Iran. But obviously, I think where the history begins, that's where it returns. And I think Turkey might be a better choice in this. There are other difficulties and challenges that we have. I think the issue of dialogue, we need to basically focus on dialogue within the Muslim societies, because it is from within our societies we are having these difficulties and problems that are emerging. Where Al-Qaeda comes from, where the Daesh is coming from, where is this group and that group is coming from, where they are basically destroying and disturbing our societies more than the Western civilization. All these things require that we need to think about them and how we can frame OIC into this broader picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reis. Based on these two challenges that Professor Reis mentioned, it drives me to trying to make a metaphor and see OIC as a garden. So this garden will only be beautiful if we, the owner of the garden, take care of it. If we the owner of the garden, hire a good gardener to take care of the garden, or make sure that the garden that we want to be, we explain to the gardener as well which kind of garden we want. It's a beautiful garden with trees, with grass, with flowers, which kind of flowers, tulips. If it's tulips, there's a particular time for that to happen. What I'm trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that an international organization, very well known, it's only what its member state want it to be. If member states of the Organization Islamic Cooperation want these institutions to be very active, like a beautiful garden, then they will make sure that it will happen. If member states don't want it to be, they prefer to have like a desert garden, then it will be a desert garden. So it's incumbent on you, the young people, that have voices that need to be heard in your governments, be it through foreign ministries or through other ministerial sectors in your countries, to make sure that your expectations about the OIC are heard. Which kind of OIC you want to see, as Professor Faris said, in 2050. So I will open the floor for some questions. I think there are some microphones that can be used. If you have any doubts, if you have any comment, any input that you want to share with audience, please.
Thank you very much. This is Muhammad Shahadat Hussain. I'm doing MCL here. My two sharing or question, whether relevant or not, I don't know. In terms of, because this is the discussion on political reform, I think. So in that case, we see the politics in Muslim countries are different. In that case, we need to have a political fiqh. Because if we understand, if we talk about reform within containing the Western philosophy or democracy or something like this, or we containing kingdom like this, so in that case, the unity sometimes hinders by this point of view. So I think we need to have a political fiqh which can unite the political understanding of the Muslim countries, first. Second one is a common market. Because we have, we need to cooperate each other based on our economy or something like this. So my sharing is that if we make a common market within Islamic countries, that makes sense to unite ourselves more. So our aspects is the OIC or the Malaysian policy can take any initiative to make such a things that can unite the Muslim states. Thank you very much.
All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. So my name is Nur Syahira binti Alias. I'm a law student from Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Laws. So my question is quite general. As we all know that OIC comprises 57 members of the states, right? And of course, there will be somehow contradictions in terms of opinions and views. And one more is that, in fact, the human diversity will lead to the different of the cultural approach, and same goes to political arrangement. So my question is, in Malaysia, we do practice the administration trend, likely we call is democracy system. Whereas contrary with the Saudi Arabia and Iran, they do implementing the theocracy administration approaches in terms of the political. So my question will be like this: is it by having this distinction in the political approaches and administration system in that particular countries comprises the members of the OIC, it will somehow having a difficulties to establish the strong political community as a whole and holistically? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Prof, for reading out the charter of OIC. Apart from the Islamic perspective, which OIC sees to based on, the non-cooperation non-interference, independency of states, and sovereignty. It seems like it is similar to the Westphalian of 1648, Westphalian Charter of Western countries. If it is based on, other than this Islamic friendship, Islamic principle, then the second or third largest Muslim majority country is in India. But India is not the part of OIC member countries. Even though India has applied for OIC member, but they denied. The consequence, what happened now, India recognized the Israeli state, and now it becomes the major exporter of weapons from Israel. So what I'm trying to say is that, sir, if Islamic principle is the sole base, then why the second largest majority of Muslim living in India has been ignored? Thank you.
But just on the case of Israel, Turkey recognizes Israel, has diplomatic relations with Israel. Egypt has, since 1979, Camp David, accords. They have recognized Israel. They have peace, accord with Israel, peace treatment, and also Jordan, just to name a few of Muslim countries. So I don't think the link to recognize Israel is to do with being member of the OIC or not being member of the OIC, in my view.
India was very keen towards Palestine. We celebrated the Palestine Day of 1939 for Palestine people, but now India is taking over.
Again, this is my humble view. There are other issues that go beyond that understanding that you most probably know what I want to say, but I will not go there because it's a discussion that will take the whole day. Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Two last.
I would just like to talk about the question regarding communication. And I would just like to relate it to the digital age, because we are in a point in history where it's never been like this before. And with so many distractions around us, how do you give solutions towards the younger Muslims to solve this problem?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Actually, I have two questions. The first question, Prof brought us in 2050, which will be a digital age, not simple as like this age which we are living here. So my question is that how we as a Muslim countries, OIC members, have such an advanced countries given two situations. The first, strong Muslim nations are involved in proxy wars in the region. Secondly, most of the Muslim countries are depending on the outside. They are not self-sufficient. My second question is, what are the main things that disunites these powerful Muslim nations?
From the audience, I will give the distinguished panelists 3 minutes each to address in general the question. I'll start from the one who finished, Professor Reis, then Professor Faris, and then Dr. Yaqub. Exactly.
I was just telling Prof. Haris that you take my 3 minutes as well, but then you called me that too. Do we need political fiqh? I think is a very good suggestion. We can look into this, but I think our jurists, our scholars have talked about these things, and we have a very rich history and literature on this. And I wouldn't say there will be anything wrong if we can get also from the West, as long as it can help us to reform ourselves. But for reforming OIC, it will depend on the OIC countries because they are independent, and these independent states will decide on the mechanisms which will best suit the reform of OIC. On common markets, I think Prof. Faris would comment. Is cultural and political differences a barrier to unity? Why it should be? The answer would be why it should be a barrier. We would rather see cultural differences and and even political differences in terms of institutions, in terms of laws, not in terms of others. So they should be rather sources of strength from which we can learn from each other. So I don't see the cultural differences a barrier to unity. The main causes of disunity, I think it requires a very different forum to say why we are disunited. There are different views, different approaches to this. Some would go to greed for power. Some would talk about the educational reforms and the educational system. Some would go to the history of colonialism, and others that who have been planted into. So it is a complex of reasons that basically are contributing to our disunity. And I think at the root of all those things, if you would like to really get rid of all of those things, we need to go back to our system of education. And I would assume that that reform should not begin only at the university level, but rather it should start at the kindergarten, at the primary school level. If we are able to build, construct personalities right from the childhood, I think we will not collapse at the university level. If you observe most of Islamic movements and other things, they begin at the university level. And if these movements are having an opportunity to grab on power, they will tend to be the most corrupt people, probably, with exception. And individuals who can withstand the tide, you go back and analyze their background, they must have been trained very well by their parents, by their teachers, by their, in the schools, by community. These individuals, they would always remain strong, even at the higher level. So to me, I think the reform to get rid of disunity and problems that the Muslims are facing is we need to focus on our educational system, and we need to focus on the primary level and the level which basically is the beginning. So the younger generation, those of you who knows that today you are here, tomorrow you will be in these ministries of education, you will be ministries of different types of ministries which will be working for different reasons. I would suggest that you please focus on the education at that level, at the grassroots level, rather than moving. And if you prepare people for the grassroots level, in the university level, they themselves will be asking for those, what we want to give them at this level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My 3 minutes. One of our brother mentioned that 2050, it will be a digital age. Who knows the digital age? Maybe it is a different age. Who knows in 2050? Because if you go to the technology exhibition, now they're talking about virtual reality. What is coming next is the virtual reality, meaning that you are not going to be here anymore. You may be sitting somewhere, but you are enjoying the show. So maybe, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it's more than the digital age. In fact, England has announced that 2020, the car will be all electrics. And then I think just yesterday they announced that by 2025, all the car will be driverless. No driver in the car. See? So that brings me to the point that you, the younger generation, because 2050 is your time, it's your time. Therefore, you must, in technology, we call it technology mapping. You have to map the technology. You cannot assume that in the 2050, technology is just like today. Who has imagined 20 years ago that we are going to have a smartphone today? 20 years ago, nobody imagined that we have a smartphone today. Okay? So you must imagine, you must have a technology mapping, and then how the Muslims must react to that. Okay, that is the thing, that assignment for all of you to do. Okay, going back to the common market. Common market, I would say that, brothers and sisters, I would not go that far. I would say that, why don't we start with a bilateral market first, before we go to the common market among the 57 countries, because based on our observation, we cannot have the common market because the level playing field are different for the 57 market, for the 57 countries. So when you have a different level playing field, you cannot have suddenly one rule for everybody. So that's why instead of going for common markets for all the countries, you should start with one or two that can really collaborate. In fact, I mean, to share with you, even now, if you are selling, let's say between Malaysia and Turkey or Malaysia and Saudi Arabia, still we have to use US dollar. Now, why US dollar? I mean, you can have your own currency. Yeah, or gold dinar, because we have a riba-free system. So those are the things that I think we need to promote first. We need to promote first. In fact, talking about Islamic financing, alhamdulillah, I think our university, IIUM, has been a very good champion in Islamic financing. And we hope that this will be the mainstream of economy in the future, because it is also been accepted by the West. And true enough, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always mention that riba is haram, riba is bad, is you see the economy nowadays. The world economy is corrupted because of riba. So that's why we have to go back to that. So that is maybe one of the things that maybe we can envision when we're talking about 2050, when we're talking about the Muslims community economy in the future. I think that is one of the things that I think we should plan for that. The last point, brother mentioned about self-sufficiency and sovereignty. In fact, when we're talking about sovereignty and self-sufficiency, I would say that from engineering perspective, technology is very important. Even though you have a country, but if you are still buying weapons from other country, if you are still buying your aeroplane from other country, if you are still buying your food from other country, you are not self-sufficient. You are not actually fully independent. You are still depending on other. So this is, I think, one of the things that is very, very important for the young generation, for the future leader to put in the plan. How to become independent. Okay? So I think that this is the thing that, I think my time is over. Okay, so finally, of course, at the end of the day, I think I concur with Professor Rais that education, at the end of the day, education is very important. But then with the education also, we need good leaders. And then with proper planning and proper vision, inshallah, I think there is a hope. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to finish up. And so look, I feel that there's not only a problem of authority in the Muslim world, there's an intellectual deficit. Okay, and I keep complaining about this intellectual deficit. Muslims are designed by the virtue of we have messengers to look up to people. So we want to turn to people. And in this generation, there are very few people we look up to. Unfortunately, we spoke about the consumption culture regarding technology. Now we have a consumption culture. We want to consume ilm, we don't want to produce ilm. This is one of the biggest problems I face as an academic, that students want to come, take, and go. And as a result of that, what happens is you look up to celebrity scholars, because to some degree, putting in the yards and putting in the effort is difficult. So you turn to a celebrity scholar, and then you end up disappointed when you start to realize that they are quite human, and they are making far more mistakes than you realize. And then you end up traumatized by that, right? And we live in this digital age, as you mentioned, and one of the things about the digital age is we want everything fast, and we want it now. But the human instinct is designed. The human instinct is designed to be with one another, to spend time with one another. Just quickly, in the 19th century, when the clock was invented, it traumatized the Muslim world. Really interesting how it traumatized it. Because when you look at the clock, it's just a device that tells you the time. But actually what it did is it told you now have to come to work at 9 and finish at 5. Okay? So now, all of a sudden, people are traumatized because they're told specifically what time to turn up. Whereas in the past, it was like, I'll see you after Salat al-Asr. It was a quite fluid society. Now the society becomes regimented, compartmentalized, as modernity starts to kick in. The point I'm making is when I had WhatsApp, initially, I had no problem with it. Now I hate it, because I feel like there's a third person in the room. Every time I'm speaking to someone at dinner, I have to check my phone because the WhatsApp groups are going insane. And they see the 2 double blue ticks and they're saying, why are you not responding? It's like somebody standing next to you just poking you, but they can't see you. Now we have to understand the epistemology of these technologies that we're using, right? And the culture that they come from, and who was building these technologies, and what's the objective. Facebook has a particular objective. We're looking at the current American administration complaining about how elections were made. So what I'm saying to you is technology has a space, and I'm not critiquing the engineer because I also was an engineer. I understand the language of ones and zeros. But then I went into political science and then became an historian. Okay, so you can actually shift and change. And just going back to the question of Ummah, actually the Ummah is a political ideology in that sense, because to have existence is to be political. To have an opinion is to be political. To have a name is to be political. And when you say you have a name, when you say you are a Muslim, you're identifying yourself. You're making a marker. That's an identity. That's to say, I exist. So when we talk about the Ummah as an idea, that's an action of existence. You're making a claim of an existence. You need to understand what that existence is. That's why I go back to my point before, right? That when we say we belong to this global fraternity that transcends borders, and when we're now living in a world where nation states are collapsing like dominoes in a region where I am teaching, you have to start asking yourself how we conceive in this concept of belonging to this political fraternity. And it doesn't need to be fixated to the current ways we understand them. It can be pretty fluid if we just start to look at this political identity in a different way. In that sense, we have to look at politics, identity, and power in different ways. And that relates to your question of technology then, right? How do we make this technology work for us? How does this function for us? And there's a young generation who is very savvy technologically. How do we make sense of using technology to some degree and marrying it with an epistemology that belongs to our tradition? That is a challenge, actually. We need to start talking about that and how we can fix it. I'm not going to say it's wrong. We just need to debate more. All right, thank you very much.
At the end of this very constructive conversation, I have to thank my dear and distinguished panelists for their insights, for sharing their time and knowledge with all of us, and of course, for the hosts for giving us the opportunity to be here with you. But I would also advise you to have a look at the report that we circulated today. Some of the questions and that you have raised are somehow pointed out in this document. The question of education, etc., it's mentioned here on how we think the Muslim majority countries should work in order to empower and develop youth for better progress of their own societies. So please do look into the document, because where there are challenges, the document calls for policy recommendations. And if these policy recommendations are not happening, do call your governments to do something about that. Thank you very much, and wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.